Venezuela, of course, is concerned, like the entire region, about the possibility of interference. We defend the sovereignty of the region and reaffirm the proclamation of Latin America as a zone of peace. For this reason, an excessive U.S. military presence in the region is unjustified.
Por eso no se corresponde esa presencia desmesurada militar en la región.
On September 19, 2025, in Bogotá, Colombia's Foreign Minister Rosa Villavicencio delivered a clear and forceful statement. With cameras rolling and microphones capturing every word, she denounced what she called the excessive U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean. Her words echoed far beyond Colombia's borders, striking a chord across Latin America, a region that has repeatedly declared itself a zone of peace. The backdrop to Villavicencio's comments is an intensifying standoff. Over the past months, Washington has steadily increased its naval and aerial deployments off Venezuela's coast. Officially, the Pentagon frames these actions as a response to narcotics trafficking networks and alleged threats from Caracas. But in the eyes of many across South America, this buildup feels less like counter-narcotics and more like creeping interventionism. In Bogotá, the concern is palpable. Colombia shares a long and porous border with Venezuela. Any escalation, military or diplomatic, risks spilling across that line, destabilizing an already fragile region. By calling the U.S. presence unjustified, Villavicencio tapped into a long regional tradition. From Mexico to Argentina, leaders have often resisted foreign militarization, especially by Washington. Latin America's post-Cold War consensus has emphasized diplomacy, sovereignty, and the rejection of external interference. Her reference to the proclamation of Latin America as a zone of peace is not rhetorical flourish. It is a direct citation of the 2014 declaration signed in Havana by the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, or CELAC. That document committed nations of the region to non-intervention, peaceful dispute resolution, and a rejection of foreign bases and troops. For Colombia's top diplomat, the U.S. deployments cut directly against that pledge. At the heart of this storm lies Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro's government has long accused the United States of plotting regime change, and the recent uptick in U.S. naval patrols has only reinforced those fears. Caracas warns that Washington is preparing the ground for a blockade, or worse, a strike. For Colombia, which has had strained relations with its neighbor for decades, the issue is delicate. Bogotá has hosted millions of Venezuelan migrants fleeing crisis, while at times cooperating with Washington's pressure campaigns against Maduro. Yet Villavicencio's statement shows a recalibration. She is signaling that Colombia, too, rejects outright military escalation, even against a government it has often criticized. Villavicencio's remarks join a growing chorus. In recent weeks, Brazil, Mexico, and even smaller Caribbean states have voiced unease at U.S. maneuvers. Latin America has lived through interventions before. Grenada in the 1980s, Panama in 1989, covert operations stretching back decades. The memory of those interventions fuels skepticism today. Observers note that the language used, zone of peace, sovereignty, unjustified presence, is not accidental. It is carefully calibrated to resonate with a regional audience wary of being pulled into another great power confrontation. From the U.S. perspective, the deployments are defensive, not provocative. Officials in the Pentagon argue that drug cartels allied with Venezuela's Tren de Aragua gang pose a transnational threat. They point to intercepted shipments of narcotics, arms, and even intelligence suggesting links with non-state militant groups. Yet the optics are stark. Aircraft carriers, warships, and surveillance planes cruising near Venezuelan waters inevitably evoke the spectre of intervention. Critics in Washington itself, legal scholars and former diplomats, have raised questions. Is the U.S. stretching international law? Does this build-up amount to coercion rather than defense? Colombia's message lands at a critical moment. The region faces overlapping crises, economic slowdowns, migration pressures, climate shocks, and political polarization. The last thing most governments want is a military showdown in the Caribbean. Villavicencio's words crystallize the stakes. Latin America insists on being treated not as a battlefield, but as a community that aspires to peace. Whether Washington heeds that warning or doubles down on its deployments may determine whether this confrontation escalates into something far more dangerous. From Bogotá to Caracas, from Havana to Brasilia, the signal is clear. Latin America is uneasy, A region once scarred by interventions now reasserts its demand to be left in peace. As Villavicencio warned, an excessive US military presence in the region is unjustified. Whether those words will reshape Washington's next moves remains the question, and the world is watching.